Okay. I'd like to call the Stockton Cultural Heritage Board to order on February 6th at 5:30. First agenda item is the roll call.
Chair Swanson,
I am here.
Vice Chair Holzer,
Present.
Member Karate,
Present.
Member Groom,
Present.
Member Harige,
Present.
Member Merlo,
Here. Present.
Member Nichols,
Here.
Member View, Member Vigil.
Here.
Thank you.
Do we have a consent calendar?
Yes, the approval of the minutes and the board meeting schedule are consent items.
Okay, I didn't find, you want us to review the calendar that wasn't attached.
It was within the report.
Is it in here? What are the changes?
So as stated in the report, the italics for June 12th, July 10th, and October 2nd, those are changes compared to the original approved calendar. Those are being recommended based off of holidays and just conflicts in city schedules. Also, I just want to make the note that the March 6th date may need to be moved, but staff is still trying to work that out. We have some, we have 3 demolition permits that need to be heard in March, but the March 6th date is presenting some issues with getting enough staff and everybody here for this meeting, so it may need to be later in the month. But that would just be a special meeting that gets called. We didn't have a set date, so I didn't want to propose a date in the staff report.
Is that the date that it's every first Wednesday of every month?
That's the typical date, and then we make these adjustments based off of conflicts in the schedule due to holidays, et cetera.
Right.
And then in March, there was additional conflicts that week that led to difficulty in scheduling, so it's a placeholder essentially. We will probably need to do a special meeting later in the month instead, but because we didn't have that date, I couldn't put it in the report.
So have the board ever provided like the next day over the conflict of to have the monthly?
I suggested just staying with the Wednesdays because that seems to fit with just what the board's been doing.
Okay.
A special meeting only needs 24-hour notice, so if it was some sort of an emergency, we could schedule one within a day's notice, but I like to give more heads up than that.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you.
Are those demos of older buildings?
I don't have all the details. That's why we want to have that meeting in March to go over them. Do you want to speak to that?
They are by code an approval that would require this body's action. So if by old you mean older than 50 years,
Yes.
and not in danger in terms of a public's health or safety hazard of the imminent nature, they are of the type that the code contemplates this board to review, that are sound structures that are proposed for demolition.
Has the primary review been done? Preliminary review.
Can you clarify what?
Preliminary review is in the demolition ordinance, what the director sends out at the beginning of a decision-making process, along with...
I'm familiar with that process. I didn't understand the term that you said, primary review.
It's
And
preliminary, it's preliminary review, preliminary announcement, it's in code.
well, I'm just trying to understand the nature of your question so I can get an accurate answer to you. Of course, the staff report that you would get would give you the full information that's required by code. So, does that answer your question?
Those would not be ready for this month anyway. That's why they will be heard in March. And that's why,
Preliminary determination, first, it's sent out to the board at the beginning of the process. That's what it's called in code. And he sends out, it's usually a letter. And then there's also anyway, there's also secret documents and/or, there's other documents that get sent out. I'm just asking if that's been done.
It has not been done
Okay.
yet.
So,
Yeah, I think traditionally the CHB has been notified about that type of structure if it's over 50 years old. So that's why what Wes is asking is important.
So I'm sorry, when you
Well-
say by typically, I just informed.
In the past, what would happen was I was chair of the Alterations Review Committee for a long time, and some city staff would contact me and say, hey, there's a proposed demolition, and what do you think, and so on. They wanted to get our input in it on, about the demolition, so.
Well, that process to me, just based on that description, doesn't reflect the code requirement, so we will follow the code in terms of The chair has alluded to a preliminary determination. We have information. These applications have been recently submitted. They have information for us to process them. I'm looking to agendize them for this board for
For the
action.
board, okay.
So you will have
Great.
the information to act, and any procedural steps beforehand, we will make those. And again, you will see that in your staff report
Okay.
when it's on the agenda.
Great.
No, at the beginning of the process, the director shall notify the property owner of a preliminary determination by first-class prepaid mail with a copy to the board. And that's at the very beginning of the process. So if an application's been submitted and it's been acted upon by the director, we're supposed to be informed by it by mail before a meeting, not in the packet of agenda.
Well, what I just explained is these are new applications that have just been received. If you could allow us to please process them in accordance with the code, we will demonstrate that in the staff report to you, and hopefully you will find compliance.
Can I say something?
Sure.
I was thinking about, before we get any diminution, before the planning commission, we could have to receive that copy also, so we can look at it and determine if it's the historic site or whatever it may be.
That's what's being discussed. It goes to you first.
Okay,
That's the purpose of the review that you would ultimately participate in. You are a check in that process. As a board member, you will have a vote.
okay. Thank you.
So if we get back to the item at hand about the minutes,
Well, I think we jumped ahead, so we can begin with, we were just looking at the calendar dates. Does anybody have a calendar objection from those changes of dates?
I'll move to a motion to accept it.
And that's a motion to accept the entire consent calendar. It's one motion for both items.
so then we'll-
I can't see.
Any item on the consent calendar, you vote by one motion, and it accepts all items on the consent calendar. So it's
Okay.
a motion to accept or to approve the consent calendar.
Okay, I'll move
We
to
have to
approve the consent calendar.
We have to review minutes first. We
Oh,
haven't
okay,
done
I'm sorry.
minutes. Correct?
No.
not
The
gonna
reason that they send the agenda in advance is so that you guys have the opportunity to review it. And then if you have questions, you're able to pull them from the agenda, from the consent, and you can talk about them there. If you don't have questions and everything looks appropriate, you can just accept it as one
I
motion.
understand, but I haven't asked if anybody has reviewed the minutes and if they have objections.
Now's your moment.
Okay. Does anybody have issues with the minutes as pre-supplied to you by, yes, sir?
Unfortunately, I missed the December meeting, but it seems like the minutes, there's really nothing on it. It looks basically like an agenda or something.
they're action minutes, so that's how the city does minutes for its boards and committees. They don't itemize like every comment or discussion. They're action minutes to identify the motions. And for December, it was informational item. There was no action. It was a public comment. So it was a very light meeting.
I do have a question. What about unfinished business? Why is it always blank on the minutes?
It means nothing was carried over, well, on the minutes, it means nothing was presented under that category, but generally unfinished business would be, and correct me if I'm wrong, counsel, like a continuance.
Could be a continuance, could be something that you started, well, I guess they're always continuances. It's an item that was brought before the board at some point previously, and that is now coming back to be completed.
Is it possible to add that PG&E as a continuance, or no?
PG&E,
Well, we received the email.
yes, so I think it's getting a little,
Yeah.
the message is getting a little confused. So these are the minutes for past meetings. So this is the record of what happened that evening. So the continuance request before you tonight is for an item that's agendized for tonight. So then the minutes for this meeting will reflect whether or not the board approves that continuance, which is being recommended by staff, and then it'll show up as unfinished business at the next agenda.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, Doug, you can make your
Okay,
motion.
so we approved the 2019, March 16th, April 3rd, May 1st, June 12th, July on page 11, August 7th, September 4th, October 2nd, November 6th, December.
Correct.
Okay, what's this, and I forgot my thought of training.
We just make a motion to approve the consent calendar.
I move to approve the consent calendar.
I second.
Okay.
So it's Doug and Tom, for those paying attention. All in favor? All in favor, I guess.
Aye.
Unanimous,
Aye.
okay.
Aye.
For the record, you still need to ask if anybody opposed, per the
Actually,
city
I
clerk.
do have a question with that. So let me make sure I'm understanding this correctly. If there needs to be a continuance or a reschedule for March 6th, will it be the following week on a Wednesday?
We don't have a
or-
date yet. That's what I was saying, that the March 6th date is a placeholder. Until we have to look at the city schedule, we have to see if this room is available. There's a number of things we have to get put together to be able to hold a meeting. We have to make sure we have an interpreter. We have to make sure the agenda timelines can be met. So we don't have a March date officially.
So how would we know whether it would be like a rescheduled or a canceled?
So
the
you would know the
difference?
week before March 6th if it's canceled.
Okay.
And then we would probably give you at least a week notice for a special meeting, just to give you a heads up.
Okay, good to know. Thank you.
But yes, the city clerk's office asked that for motions to please ask for any nays for the sake of the record.
Okay.
So do we have any objections?
No,
Okay.
Thank you.
thank you.
And moving on, do we have informational items,
No?
unfinished business?
No?
Then we move to the certificate of appropriateness for 345 East Acacia.
Good evening, board members. I'll be giving your presentation this evening for this item. The application concerns 345 East Acacia Street. It's at the northwest corner of East Acacia and North Sutter. It's just south of Harding Way. University Park is located immediately to the east. This site is located within the Magnolia Historic District, as you can see on the map on display here. Large yellow blob on the right hand is University Park. We'll gradually move down to the ground. Here's just an oblique aerial looking at that project site in context. You can see it's the building on the corner there. It's white. The application before you started through a code enforcement action. A report was provided and a case opened for the replacement of windows without the benefit of permits being issued. A total of 4 window openings have been replaced, as you can see in the photograph. This modern or streamlined modern style, architectural style building previously, as you can see in a shot from 1977, like the other openings in the building, either has glass block or a square gridded window pattern throughout. Those original windows appear to have been present through at least 2015 and up until the unpermitted removal occurred. As detailed in your staff report, we've reviewed the proposed unpermitted windows against the design guideline provisions that apply for a rehabilitation project. And I've noted here in red text, the staff's conclusion is that those use of horizontal slider single pane windows are not consistent with the original architectural style of this building and are additionally incompatible with the other existing original windows in the building. There are other provisions that are provided in the guidelines that the board may rely upon, the last one of which would be more permissive in that if the board felt so inclined to authorize these windows to exist, in that they do not represent a new opening into the building, they're replacements of existing openings. They could in the future be replaced. Staff has taken what I would characterize as a compliance approach to the guidelines, but also one that is intending to incentivize that eventual restoration. Our recommendation is for approval of this application for alternative windows that are consistent with the architectural style to be provided at a future date. This approval would be valid, as we've mentioned in past meetings, for a 12-month period. I understand that there is a financial aspect to this, and this would allow the property owner time to find a suitable replacement window and obtain a permit and approval for that installation. I think with that, this application is rather straightforward in terms of the analysis. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Well, I have some comments. Anything? Oh, one of the things that wasn't mentioned in the review of the architecture, I'm not sure if you're familiar with this, but this is the building that thing's based on. Here, I brought multiple copies. This is a World Heritage Site structure in Germany. The point is that one of the attributes of those windows that's real important is that the corners are supposed to look cantilevered, in that there is no structure there. Now, this is the real thing, this particular building. This is the basis of a lot of this form of architecture. And the windows have to be such that in the corners there is no apparent support. In the original windows, I believe in that building, there's a steel pipe in there or something in the actual corner that you can see in the renovation, I think. But the original windows were steel framed, and the idea is that they aren't holding up the roof. So there's a lightness that's apparent in the structure. So the important thing about the windows that are approved is not just that they are multi-paned windows, but they maintain the historic quality of what the architecture is supposed to have, which is this lightness or apparent cantilevered roof. So I reviewed the proposed resolution, and I've added that upon subject approval, the director, I would like the windows that are going to eventually be approved to be shown to the Architectural Alterations and Review Committee for approval before they go in, so that this feature is maintained. So I've edited the proposed resolution.
Okay, so
That's what I'm asking for.
that would be more of a, I think, more of a comment for your fellow board members. I hear you, I understand.
Well, I
And
know, but
I don't have a
some of these-
comment about it. That's your prerogative.
My point being is that I'm not comfortable with just having, because from reading the review, that all the architectural points weren't touched upon. And the windows in that building, like the windows in this illustration I'm providing, are all matched in pattern and size and have a lightness in the corner, which is what the windows were in that building. So it's important that the windows that are replaced meet that criteria aesthetically. So the resolution doesn't say that, so I want something in there which allows the board to review the windows, because I want those to be preserved. Or the board might, and I will ask the board to review my suggestion and make this part of the resolution.
Can I have it?
Yeah.
I have a question. In this picture right here I'm looking at, it have number 22. It have 1, 2, 3, 4 replacement window. The red that are not numbered, that have a bunch of window, I don't know what they call that design, but is that going to be preserved, and the other two, and the other number that are numbered, are they going to be like double pane window, or how are they going to be preserved?
Are you asking would the replacement windows be double
The one
pane?
that is, that I understand that the number that it did, it's the one that are going to fix the repair of the window, right? The number. And the one that is not numbered, that have the window, little window that is, it's not going to be touched, right top. See it on that screen right there?
The ones that are not numbered.
Those are not subject to this application for alteration.
Okay. So that's what I'm trying to get at.
But there had been an option to get grids when they installed it?
So the applicant is here, so maybe some of these questions can be directed towards the applicant for clarification.
Yes, thank you.
Can I see?
Sure.
I'm David Wellenbrock and own that building. Actually, I'd like to amend it because I want to do the other windows the same on the other side, the same. The glass block windows are not going to be saved. I mean, are going to be saved. They're really, as far as I can tell, the essence of the style. The report states that this is a modern, but actually I think it's more Art Deco. And Art Deco had more than one different style in it. There are Art Deco buildings, and I brought examples that I just went to the library and found books examples where this sort of window was actually used. I can bring, so that it was not a completely rigid style. Some of them had panes, some have more, fewer panes, and some are pretty much like this one. I only,
Is it possible that they could have added grids on these windows to at least have some sort of
Are you asking staff?
similarity? Yes, or whoever, I'm not sure.
You're asking
Yes,
staff? Can you,
staff. Could there have been a possibility that there could have been the option of getting grids on these windows? Because I know they offer that.
yes,
know.
you may purchase windows that are hand-built or manufactured that are true divided, that are comparable to the original. It may not be that something that you pick up at a retail store. It's possible to acquire them.
Yes, because I'm looking at the windows and they look kind of modern, even if, I'm not sure what he's trying to explain on the windows, but if he's going to replace other windows, it's going to take away the essence of the building.
no, it could be the same relative window. This is a fourplex, and they got identical units mirrored on the side. So the other side's going to look the same way as this side with those windows. And this is an Art Deco building. It's got a spiral staircase inside. We haven't changed the paint or anything like that. When we painted it years ago, we kept exactly the same paint that it was on when I bought the building. The staff report states that this isn't consistent with the style. Now, it may not, it's not the same as it was, and you might not like it as well as it was, but Art Deco buildings do in fact come in various, a lot of them have small grids, some of them have horizontal grids, some have vertical grids, and some of them have, and there's an example from South Beach, Florida, that says that it's pretty much like that. So it seems to me that if we find that there are other Art Deco buildings that have those type of windows, then these windows aren't inconsistent with the style. Therefore, it might be, you might want more, but I don't think I'm required to do more. And this is what I did. We're trying to rehab this building. We had the person who was running it sort of let it run down a little bit, and she'd been gone for about a year. We've now rehabbed the third unit is about to be done, and we're going to do the fourth unit. These are better windows in the sense that they're double paned. They're better for the tenants in the sense that they're better economically for them. I don't believe they're inconsistent with the style. We didn't find any readily available windows other than these, and we put these in. I think that all we have to do is be within the style of Art Deco, and then we should be approved, because the argument is they're not consistent with it. I don't think you get to pick between which different sort of Art Deco styles. It might be nice to have the other pane windows, but these seem to be consistent with the style, and therefore we ought to be able to do them.
I believe that the grids could be put in these windows to match the rest of the building. That would
Pardon?
be consistent.
I think you're going to answer my question regarding the paint, the window itself, that it needs to be, some of the windows are not made, so they have to be in modern time, that double painted and things like that. And my question was, the number, the one in the red, like 1, 2, 3, and 4, are going to be removed and put a new panel window, and the one on the other side, is it going to be consistent with the other?
The 1, 2, 3, and 4
It's going to be,
are new ones.
okay.
They're the ones that the staff recommends we pull out and replace to make them look like the other side. And we want to pull them all out, and I'd like to amend my application to put all four apartments and put those windows in there, because they're basically consistent with at least a minority of the Art Deco style.
Okay, thank you.
It would seem to me that you are on track. The 4 windows that is recommended in the application be pulled out could be replaced with even if the material was different, even if they were, vinyl-type windows, but they could have grids in them so that they would look consistent with the rest of the building. Can't that be done? I mean, I know it can be.
I assume it can be done. I mean, it'd be a pain and an expense, and, we're trying to get the building fixed up, and, this has been we've kept this in a neighborhood that's not really spectacular neighborhood, and this has been I've kept it so that, there are not police calls there, there's not things like that.
In my own use of doing this type of deal, the cost difference between a window like this and one with a grid in it is not enormous. That's a nominal change, they just put the grid in.
They don't offer them with grids in those windows that I know of.
Yes, because the way they look, they almost look more modern than they do the building with having some historic
Absolutely
accents
true.
in it.
Absolutely true.
Well, that may be, but the way I read what was sent out, inconsistent with the Art Deco style. It seems to me that I get approval if it is consistent with Art Deco style, even if it is a minority group of Art Deco style. And there are examples that are passed out that there are Art Deco buildings, including those on South Beach, that have windows similar to that.
I
But
think
those
we're going to
buildings are more
disagree on
modern.
the architectural style of the building. That building is on the City of Stockton walking tour. It's been identified as modern for decades. The building that I brought the exhibit of is the model of that type of building. This has all the same features as your structure, the curved walls, the matching panels, the cantilevered corners. That's your style. The Art Deco style is later, and it's a different style.
The example you
Yes.
have looks to me like it's squared off. The front got a little round to it, but
Just
that's...
like your building. The central part of your building has curves like this one does. The exterior part is cantilevered multi-pane windows, the same thing,
This is squared.
like yours.
The windows are squared.
It's exactly the same. And the important thing about your building was it had all matching paneled windows all the way around it
And they-
until
yes,
now.
And they all
So
have grids.
the style of that building is particular. You're in the historic district. The building has the windows in it that it came with, and that's the proportions and style that need to be retained. Yes, sir.
Okay. So Art Deco came before Moderne. Moderne evolved out of Art Deco. And the whole point of Moderne is to have, and it is even stated in the exhibit that you gave. It is the embodiment of the American modern Art Deco idiom, which evolved in the 1930s. Designers used the functionalist look to create forms which remained decorative. And part of that involves a uniformity, like a coherence of form. And so when you have modern architecture, and if you look at the photo exhibit that Chair Swanson provided, the windows in a modern Art Deco building have to be identical, or almost identical.
Have to be what?
They have to be almost identical. And so it is Art Deco, but it's an Art Deco modern. Modern is a style of Art Deco architecture. So the windows have to be the same.
Bob wants to comment?
Yeah, several comments. First of all, the name of the apartment building, it's the Manson Apartments. They were built in 1936, the Manson Apartment. And it's listed as streamlined modern. And it was designed by Frank Mayo, a prominent Stockton architect who's also known for the Medico-Dental building. So this is a contributing structure to the historic district, unlike what was in the report there. The type of, first of all, that is, unfortunately, that's not correct. This attachment C here for altered windows, there's I think 8 or so altered windows.
We've only altered 4 of them so far. The other side hasn't been done.
Well, you mean, Bob means the two sides. So
Oh,
each
okay.
corner consists of 2 windows, so that's 8.
Well, what I mean is that I'm not talking about double windows. There are 4 windows there, but if you go to the corner of Acacia and Sutter, some of those windows have been replaced as well.
No.
Yes, I can show you photos. I took, yeah, they're in.
And already,
What happened to the original windows?
well, they were pretty well rotted out. They'd been there a long time.
They're steel frame windows?
They had been, yeah, they were, you know, I mean, I'm pretty sure they're the original windows. There's a lot of that building, and it's reaching the age that the metal in it, I mean, I've been replacing a fair amount of plumbing was cast iron that's sort of, and the windows, a lot of them were rusted out, windows panes were broken. They were pretty rough windows.
Do you still have them? Well, that's the glass that I mean, the frames.
No, we don't have the frames,
All right.
but
Any other,
Yes, what I'd like to point out is the windows that were replaced are like a slider-type window. The windows that are original, and there is fortunately still a remaining one upstairs over to the right of number 1 there, are casement windows. They're an entirely different type of window. They have a little crank that will open them up. They're made out of metal, and these have 3 horizontal panes of glass, but it's a complete metal frame. I don't know if these particular windows were bought at Lowe's. You certainly can't find the casement windows similar to that off the shelf. That's just not going to happen. You know, it's a complete, and these were metal ones. I wish they had been saved. They could have probably been restored pretty easily. But these other windows here are so totally different in appearance, and it really detracts from the building.
Chair, can I ask a follow-up question?
sure?
Member Holzer? Relative to your comments about the contributing nature of the structure, the staff report's noting that we looked for records, but we're not able to locate, for example, a survey sheet that showed it was documented as a contributing building. We assumed it was, based on, as stated in our staff report, based on age and by parents today. More recently, when it was not altered, do you have if you have a specific information source that you can help us do further research? I'm not asking for it now, but you could.
There used to be on the city website
Could send them copies.
a map
So I'm asking.
that had indicated all the contributing structures in the district.
I think
Well,
he's
I could.
asking for the.
Well, I could get that, but you had even more info. All I'm asking is, can you help me do a better job?
Absolutely.
By share the information source that you drew from to make those comments, and we don't have to do it in the meeting tonight, but if you could subsequently.
I'm always available.
Thank you.
before the question, he suggested, Mr. Nichols said maybe we could put grids in them. And I don't particularly want that idea, but I'd much prefer that to having to try to take the things out.
Putting grids into the windows is not an expensive undertaking to.
Well, I'm on your side now. I appreciate that because I don't particularly want to have to replace these windows. It's expensive and you're trying to, have the neighborhood there. And we've kept this in the same style for decades.
Even if you put grids in those new replacement windows, they're not going to look or function nearly like the originals.
Well, they may not function the way, but from a person driving by on the street and so forth, they wouldn't destroy the nature of the building.
Sure it would. But if you look at that window, the replacement window, it's a slider, and you have there is a vertical vinyl, whatever you want to call it, in the middle, which is not present in the other windows. So the original windows had
Well, that's
three-
probably because of the
three
slider.
horizontal panes, not that vertical one is just totally didn't exist in the original.
That
Well, you
vertical,
actually-
that
actually the
vertical that's
verticals-
there is because it's a slider.
Right.
I'm sure, you could get the windows without the slider so they don't open.
The verticals actually were, if you look
Conceivably.
over at the far
Yeah, but
right,
you're still talking about.
those were small panes. They were not three. They weren't just three. They were cut up into
It's still going to be, I went by and looked at the house, the corners are filled in, it's going to have it's going to look like it has a post on the end of the corners of the building. And that's not acceptable. The windows have to look like they did before, which was a real thin metal strip. It was enclosing the post.
Well, see, that's part of my argument, is they have to look like they're within the style. They don't have to look like they did before.
But you know what, I noticed that the window over there had to be, back then, the safety code, no matter how to have window, or things like that, whether they're open or closed, they have to have a window to have exit to get out. So is that a home or is that a building? I mean, apartment. So they need to have some way to get out if it's going to be just a pane window itself. They got to have some kind of opening the window to get out when it comes to fire, a safety hazard.
There are, you can get out, there's sliders.
Okay.
They can get out, that's not the problem. The problem is the lack of grids and,
Okay.
I mean, but,
All right, do we have any other,
I think the grids would help.
I agree.
so do we have any other comments, questions? Thank you.
well, I mean, it sounds to me like there's at least a minority willing to talk about putting grids in there. And I'd like to have, if we're going to do it, it ought to be for the whole building, one way or the other. But I think that this is within the style, even if it's not within.
Okay. Anyway, I propose that we accept the staff's resolution with the addition on the last page where it says, subject to approval of the director and the CHB Alterations and Review Committee. And that's just so that the board will have input through that committee on the window selection. And that's my only suggestion. And so if that's acceptable to everybody on the board,
Yeah, I so move.
we have a
I'll
motion.
second it.
A motion from, I'm forgetting everybody's names, Mr. Murillo and
Vigil.
and all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That was
But
unanimous?
yes.
Okay, it's all in favor. Okay, so that's approved, and I'll sign it with those amendments to it.
Would it be, Lori, would it be appropriate to vocalize the appeal provision for the audience?
Recommendation, correct? This is not a final
Oh,
decision.
thank you.
Appeals are for final decision.
So thank you for the recommendation. We will speak with the applicant and let them know of the ultimate decision of the director, including any appeal provisions.
All right, will we still pass the resolution in that condition?
You absolutely did. It's your resolution of recommendation to the director, yes.
But when are we going to have an impact, are the architectural review, you going to be involved in this process? I thought that's what we voted on.
Well, my understanding is that it's a recommendation that goes to the director where he takes all this into account in his decision.
We are asking to be involved in our resolution. That's all we can do.
Do you want me to walk you through what happens next sequence in terms of steps?
Yes.
Sure.
So this board makes, this action is, the review authority by code is the director of community development. This board provides a recommendation to the director. You've just passed a resolution that is a formal recommendation. I fully expect that after this meeting, we will draft a final decision, which will be consistent with your recommendation. We are in alignment in the substance of the recommendation, and that action will be final and transmitted to the applicant. There will be an appeal period, that's 10 days from that point. If there is an appeal, it would go to the Planning Commission for consideration. The condition speaking to the Alterations Committee involvement will have to be invoked by the submittal of materials within the approval timeframe of the permit that's issued, the certificate of appropriateness. If that is not acted upon timely, this is, as I mentioned, a code enforcement case. So it would proceed under a different avenue for compliance. Does that answer your question?
Well, I guess what I was hoping was that the Alterations Review Committee would be able to discuss this with the director before he made a determination. And that we would get to review materials?
That is the
before?
Are you asking about the decision or the actual window?
Yeah, my concern is with the window.
Okay. So we don't have a design for a window. We have an applicant who's proposing to retain what's there. We would need for the applicant to come to the city, to the director vis-à-vis me, submitting a proposed window design and specifications, and we would receive those, and then we would review them in accordance with the conditions. And so the recommended condition is for them to have the grid pattern, and I've heard about a casement type window. We will review that, as the condition says, with the committee, and we'll have a conversation. We'll get input, and then maybe it's on target, maybe it's not, but we'll move from there.
Thank you.
Can ask Melanie to contact the director.
What?
Melanie is the chair, and she can contact the director.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Moving on. Consideration structure of merit designation for Stockton Gas Plant, 535 South Center.
So as was sent by email and also provided tonight, the applicant has, well, the property owner has requested a continuance to allow them to gather more information for presentation to the board. Staff is in agreement with the request, so staff is recommending that this item be continued to a later date.
Yeah, we'll consider that in a moment. Has everybody reviewed the application? Does anybody, since it turned out it's my application, I'd forgotten about it, it's been so long. Does anybody have any questions about it?
I do. Is that the one is that the presentation that the director was talking in the beginning of the meeting, talk about the PG&E?
This is across the street,
No,
Across the street.
different building.
different building.
Got it, okay, now I got it, all right.
I just have a quick comment.
Sure.
Because I saw this and I went back in my institution's archive. Charles Weber was an early investor in this.
I actually got some of the information from Mickey Grove.
Yeah, yeah.
It also turns out that most of that information came from, much of it started from an application of PG&E to demolition the various sites. And it also turns out, which was a really good source for why the building mattered.
Yeah.
And from my point of view, in a very easy sense, the building meets all kinds of criteria for importance in Stockton as a historical structure. It also turns out that a whole bunch of the evidence came from a book PG&E published in the 1950s when they were kind of proud of the history. And we could go on for hours about the amazing gas industry that used to be in Stockton. Started in 1859, at the beginning of this, before the Civil War. That particular site was an active gas production site through the 1930s that kept it as an emergency system. Turns out that there actually were about 30 different companies in Stockton producing or mining for gas, which is where the baths used to get their energy and stuff. The electricity that was produced in the city of Stockton came from the gas company as a side product. The weirdest thing was, one of the companies involved in the history of the gas production in Stockton was the company that built the battleship Oregon. And what's the connection, one might ask? When they put the first gas lines in the city of Stockton, they were repurposed boiler tubes from locomotives and steamships.
That makes sense.
So when they gutted the boilers, they repurposed the pipes, which is also why they would tend to leak and explode, because they were already had it in terms of leaking and so forth. Anyway, as far as the application and merits of the building, does anybody have any other questions?
It's probably not appropriate to discuss the item without the applicant here. They clearly requested.
I'm the applicant.
Well, I mean the property owner. The property owner requested the item be continued so
Okay,
they can be present.
Okay, let's consider that for a moment. Procedure for the designation of structure of merit. Notice and hearing not required. A public notice or hearing shall not be required for designation of structure of merit. And if in the summation of that particular pauses, the board's decision is final. There's no requirement for owner acquiescence or appearance or approval. There's nothing in this document which is new. The application has been out for most of a year. Objections could be done. The same people that are in contact with the planning department objecting, apparently, although he never states an objection, are the same people in charge of the demolition permit. I think it's a fairly safe, and I've spoken to all these people in the past, as a matter of fact, many of us has. And their purpose and intention here is to scrape the site so they can make a sale of the property. Now, our contention in discussions with them in the planning department was that they retain the building and sell it to some other user. So I know what they're going to be saying. We don't have to have their appearance here. And unless somebody has an objection, I would like to have a motion on a vote to designate the structure a structure of merit. Do I have a motion?
I motion that.
I'll second it.
Could we have a motion from Lourdes and a second from Douglas? All in favor of designating the structure as a Stockton structure of merit? Say aye.
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 Any opposed? None opposed. Thank you. Now, at this point, I'm happy to close this section. Moving on, citizens' comments.
So, I'm sorry, Chair, but there's some criteria that you need to go to in order to, you need to establish that on the record that you guys have met the criteria to designate that as a structure of merit. So if you could do that, so we have that on the record?
You have to state the stuff in your report.
The stuff in my report fulfills the requirements of the section. I know we've never done that before.
Are you just adopting the report into the record in support?
Yes.
It's in the resolution.
There is actually a resolution attached to the staff report.
I'm not interested in using the resolution. If you'd like us to refer that to the, what's our review committee for documents? Publications Committee for review, we can do that and consider it at the next meeting.
The resolution is what designates the item.
No,
It's-
the vote does. That's in code. A motion and a vote designates the thing as a structure of merit. That's in code. I just read it. We don't have to make a resolution. And we just had the vote. It's in code. We're done. We by our determination, by the group voting for the motion supports the evidence as it was given. If we need to make a motion about the evidence, I'm happy to do it.
Yes, please.
Okay. Do I have a motion that the evidence presented supports the structure of merit designation?
Motion to approve.
Second?
Second.
Second.
So it's Anthony and Bob?
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. If you'd like us, would you like us to consider your resolution through the Publications Committee for review, for consideration in the future meeting? I'm happy to do that if you'd like.
The resolution is simply intended to be an artifact of your action.
I understand, but
That's
but
how-
it cites, that particular document cites a whole bunch of documents that are not presented here. And for one thing, that's a violation of the Brown Act. We can't be discussing documents that aren't available to the public. And under those documents citing CEQA, and CEQA cites guidelines, and the CEQA guidelines and CEQA cite other aspects of California common law, which wasn't presented. So we can review all of that and consider the resolution for the future if you like. But but the board has to have the opportunity to review the resolution in detail since it has detailed comments.
You've had it for a week. That staff report was published for your review, so
Okay, well
we're
then-
not intending to slip anything by you. Again, it is a matter of how we conduct business and
Okay.
have records of action.
Then we're just going to pass it by a vote as we did and not use the resolution.
Yeah.
Thank you. Now, have we satisfied the council? Thank you. Can we move on to citizens? Do we have citizen comments tonight? I see a member of the public in the corner, no comments. Now, moving on to committee and liaison reports. We might have some tonight. Yes, Anthony.
The Landmarks Committee at the last meeting, sorry, I'm getting sick. At the last meeting, we had discussed a plaque audit, and we have divided up the properties to visit in the city to catalog what is currently there or not there. So we will have that ready by the March meeting.
Excellent. Any other committees that may have met? Yes, liaisons are next.
Yes,
No, liaisons are next, just a second.
I am the.
No other committees?
No, I'm just kidding.
Okay, then we have liaisons. Do we have any successful liaison comments?
Yes, I do. I did, thank you for helping me with setting up with the Stockton Alliance, Downtown Stockton Alliance. I had a presentation last month regarding, I just gave him I met Paula Shield. she's a wonder woman, it's my contact, and she will be working together with us at the board. And so what I did, make the packet up a list of information, our duty and our responsibility, and our membership board, as well as sample award application, just as award of excellent captain, Charles Webster and Glenn Allen Award, and its recipient. So it's been a positive experience for me, so I'm glad I'm going to be working with them as well.
Thank you. Bob?
Well, I'm a member of the Alterations Review Committee, and I wanted to point something out. When I went out and looked at the property at the 345 East Acacia that we were talking about earlier, I happened to drive by another house in the historic district where they are replacing the windows, not through apparently the certificate of appropriateness procedure. There's a lot of windows that have already been replaced. Well, we're particularly, I mean, the windows were not appropriate to begin with their grids. They were not appropriate. But there were even some windows around a chimney that were smaller than the opening, which is, I think, a clear violation of the building code. The property is located at 220 East Willow Street. I don't know if we can do something about that, if we can send a letter to the owner saying that replacement windows are in the purview of a certificate of appropriateness or something, but that's would be my suggestion.
Can initiate the code enforcement process based on your report.
That'd be okay. That'd be great.
I have a question, Bob. Are the windows just replacements, or are they, for example, putting in smaller windows that don't fit the openings?
Right. I think the two over by the chimney were definitely smaller. They also, which I have a real problem with, the windows that they were replacing were the vinyl windows with the grids in them, and that is not, there would not be grids in the original windows for this particular property. It would be just a double hung window without any kind of divide. So.
What's the style of the house? It doesn't matter, I'm just
Are
curious.
there pictures available? Oh.
Yes, I do, but they're on my phone.
Well,
so
you could perhaps send them to the staff later.
Oh, yeah, I can definitely.
All right, any other, thank you, Bob. Oh, yes, sir.
Yeah,
Phyllis, I'm sorry.
so, Member Merlot here. So I was named on the liaison committee. I don't know if there's anybody else in the committee, because I was
No,
never...
a liaison is a particular, wait a minute.
A particular officer, or...
It's liaisons to specific groups, I believe.
Yeah,
like,
so,
do you
and
know?
I'm liaising with other historical organizations in the area, including the San Joaquin Historical Society Museum, the Hagen, and the city clerk's office, because there's a city historian, city archivist, and we have been working on recovering a large trove of blueprints and other cultural, architectural resources from the offices of Ralph Morel, Franklin Werner, Frank Mayo, who are all listed here, actually, which I thought was cool. And then later Joseph Loscan, another well-known Stockton architect. And that will be available for folks here and for you folks to review, because those documents will be going to the city clerk's office and will be available. And they include the blueprints for a large majority of the Magnolia Historic District, which were lost in the 90s, the city copies, but we found the architect's copies. And so those will be available for you folks. I just want to mention that. It's been an effort that myself and a few citizens in the community and Catherine Rowland have been working on. So
Thank you for that, that's very helpful.
Hopefully in a week or two, that'll be available for you.
Are your archives available online, or is it more of an in-person visit to like pull information for historic references?
The archives at the Historical Society, you have to go in person. Same with the city clerk's office. These particular blueprints will likely be in the city clerk's office.
Yeah, that's easy to
because the
access.
public copies were thrown away in 1992. Wow. And so we track them down.
Okay. Thank you. Douglas had a comment?
Yeah, now, I would like to know that right now, we're talking about subcommittee. Right now, I'm on the subcommittee on the media, you know. Right now on Facebook, I already set up a media culture heritage board. Anybody could share it. Anybody could put information into it. And I don't know who in our committee that I know that are aware. Okay. So I need to get a hold of Anthony, get you on the connection so you can, you know, put some information into the Facebook website and information or historical, whatever. It's all been, so I'm going to have you connect with that as well as Anthony, Tom as well, to do that. So that, I've been pretty much putting the video from our meeting posted so we can educate the people that we exist, and also aware of other stuff that in our agenda will be, okay? And so that's it so
Okay.
far. And also on the Stockton website, I know that the Art Commission have their application for their, so can we have our application for any of the 3 applications that we put on
I
the
can
website?
send you a link for those. They're available.
They are, okay.
I just want to add on that, we have 1 vacancy on that committee. So if anybody else wants to do it, and there's no chair, so anybody's, if you all haven't received the committee assignment document, that's my fault, and I'll get that to everybody. Okay. Any other, I lost my thing here. Any other?
Yes. Speaking of the Publications Committee, I think we were waiting to hear from the Awards Committee about any sort of deadline for submissions for the Glen Allen Award and the
That's
Captain
Bob.
Weber Award. So
So you'll coordinate on that.
anxiously awaiting that.
Yeah, and somebody can stage a coup and take over the Publications Committee and coordinate with Bob, and you do the document, whatever. We need to get that out and solicit some applications and stuff. Bob's always done a great job finding stuff, too, so it's a great show.
Well, we talked about doing that in the spring sometime, so we are getting closer to spring. So, but maybe at the March meeting, then we could discuss if we want to, announce the awards and so on, and how to do it and so on.
Okay.
We're done with committees liaisons. Does anybody have just a comment, board member?
I have a question.
Oh, sure.
Just to make sure I understood this correctly, now the resolution that was on page 27, is that something that we could follow for other appropriations? Or I just want to make sure I'm understanding this correctly.
Resolution,
On page 27?
The window resolution.
Could we follow some of those suggestions for other appropriations? Or this does not apply?
so these are provided based on findings that are codified and also the Department of the Interior. So that would be provided to you for every certificate item. So
Oh.
this is, you would get one that's with the same types of findings, but directed towards that particular property.
Oh.
So you'll have this for your reference.
And it
every
would
time.
apply to that building?
Yes, based off of the findings and research completed that gets presented in the staff report.
Okay, thank you for explaining that.
Oh, here, it's on the back of.
Okay, any other board comments? I'll make one comment. I've had several complaints from members who haven't had their emails responded to by staff. So
I
without-
received an email from a member view that I replied to.
I'm just saying I've had several as in 3. So I'm just would be nice if people responded their emails. It could be a mistake. I'm just
I-
mentioning it because it was brought up to my attention.
They were
by
two,
members.
okay, well.
Different members of staff who didn't respond.
I have to
different
add
members of
something.
staff, okay.
I'm not
I-
implicating anybody. I'm just saying.
I have an issue with my iCloud email, and I just want to disclose that it's been, because I sent one to myself from a different email, and I was not receiving it. And so could I disclose if maybe they could contact me on the l_howdige@u.pacific.edu? Because my other iCloud email, I'm not getting those emails. I don't know why.
Before you leave, can you write it down for me? So we can
Yes.
update?
Yes.
Thank you.
I mean, I would like to disclose that.
Thank you, yeah, we'll update our contact sheet.
Thank you.
Okay, and in that case, then it's secretary comments?
None tonight, Chair.
Okay, that's fine. In which case, then I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Somebody,
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Philip or Merlot and Karate. And I think, and all in favor?
Aye.
Any abstentions, objections? None. Okay, thank you.